Okay, welcome to another edition of the Edlow podcast. Subscribe. As everybody knows, I am a huge pro wrestling fan, and this is probably one of the most exciting ones I've ever had. I have one of my favorite tag teams of all time on, and I was able to get both of them on. We have Bill Eadie and Barry Darsow, aka Axe and Smash of Demolition. Guys, welcome to the Edlow podcast.
Nice to be with you, my friend.
Yes, thank you very much for having us on.
I remember when you guys came on. So I was a young guy. I was born in 81. I think Demolition came around WrestleMania 4 is when I remember you guys coming onto the scene. And you guys looked so different than anything I'd ever seen. I mean, I'd seen, the Powers of Pain and the Road Warriors, but you even looked a little different than them. And let's start by asking, how did this come about?
Well, Randy Colley, who was the original Smash, had approached me and Vince with an idea. They had watched and I keep forgetting the movie, forgive me, with Mad Max, I believe was, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And came up with the idea of having a wrestling character based on that. And then we talked to Vince about it. And unfortunately for Randy, and it didn't work out. We had two matches. One, I think, was in the Meadowlands. The other was in Hamburg, Pennsylvania for TV. And the fan reaction when we came to the ring was very positive. And then we took our exterior mask, our ring mask off, and everybody recognized Randy because he had been in there for a number of years, successful as the Moondog tag team champions. And after the second day, I told Randy, I said, the character's going to work. If you want to continue by yourself, I was going back and forth to Japan as Mass Superstar. I said, but it's not going to work with you doing it. And he agreed, and he graciously stepped aside. I went back to Japan, and then Barry was involved, and he can tell you how he was approached.
Yeah, so when all this was happening, I didn't know it was happening. I was down in Crockett's territory wrestling with Ivan Koloff and Nikita Koloff. And I got in an argument with Jim Crockett over money, and I ended up quitting there. So my idea was to go home for a couple of weeks and, go to Japan again like I did before and just kind of have my career go to Japan and see what happened from that. And Earl Hebner called me up and he said, hey, Barry, you want me to talk to, his brother, who was a referee up there in the WWF, to talk to Vince for me. And I said, yeah, shoot, that'd be great. And then I was training in Ricky Steamboat's gym, and Ricky says, hey, you want me to call Vince and see if he can get up there? I said, yeah. So I had all these guys working, and I didn't even want to go to work anymore, but I thought, well, if I can get in, I'll get in. And Ricky says, well, I'm going to call him right now. So Rick goes back in the office and calls up Vince. It's about a day or two later, all of a sudden Vince calls me up and he says, hey, Barry, I'd like you to come up to my office. I'd like to meet you. So they end up flying me up there to the office, and they showed me a book with a bunch of different characters in it. And they made me sign a non-compete. And then they showed me a picture of the Demolition, but it really wasn't what we were looking like. And he says, how would you like to do this? And I said, shoot, I'd love to do it. Whatever you want me to do, So Vince says, well, we got an opening here, and there's I said, well, who would my partner be? And he says, well, it'd be Bill Eadie. And I said, well, I've met Bill before. And I said, I got a lot of friends, and I knew he was the Mass Superstar. So then right away, I knew this wasn't going to be just some jabroni thing. It was going to be a real tag team. So I told him, I'm definitely in whatever you want. Then he said, well, he had to talk to Bill first to make sure it was okay with Bill to have me as his partner. So then that process kind of went by, and I told Vince, I said, I just need 2 or 3 months off though, because I've been on the road for about 4 years every day, and I was really beat up. And so I signed a contract, and then 3 months later, that's when we had our first TV match. So that's kind of how I came in. And I never knew anything about Randy Colley or, the Demolition or anything. I just got the outfit and got out there with Bill.
Yeah. So Bill, when they said it was going to be Barry coming in, how did you feel about that? Did you know Barry? Did you heard of him?
I didn't know him. We had met, but we went up, and I went up. My daughter lives in Charlotte, and Barry was in Charlotte at the time. But I knew he was tag team partners with Nikita, but more importantly, Ivan. And I knew if he was working with Ivan, that he knew how to work. So we met. I forget where we had dinner someplace or lunch, and we hit it off right away. And then we got together, and we often say about after the third or fourth match we had together, we knew it was going to go because it just clicked.
Yeah. So, tag team wrestling is so different than singles wrestling. Maybe you can talk about how the importance of the team chemistry to make a team really work.
Well, the chemistry is very important, and we get asked almost every time we go out to a convention or do an interview, what's the difference between the teams now and the teams used to be? Used to be they had actual tag teams. That meant that each guy in the team was working for each other. They were working to make the team better. And unfortunately nowadays, they have this guy, and they have them under contract, and they bring them together, and they don't want to have them sit back in the back and not work. So they say, okay, we're going to make a tag team. It's going to be tag team ZY. Well, Z and Y don't want to be in the team. They want their own individual program. That's what they were promised in first. But years ago, and Barry will attest to it too, when you were a team, you thought for the team. You did things for the team. You weren't selfish. You weren't worried about, am I going to look bad? Or we wanted the team to look good, and that's what we did.
And with me, my whole career, I learned. I was like the learning tree. Every partner I had, I learned a lot, and all my partners were a lot older than I was. And it started off with Nikolai Volkov. He taught me a lot. And then Ivan, and then Jim Neidhart, and all the different partners. And when I got to have Bill for a partner, he's wrestled everybody all the way around, and I just listened to him. And after a couple of months, I knew everything he was going to do. He knew everything I was going to do, and it just worked out really well. But now tag teams. I watched wrestling last night, and I don't really watch wrestling. But I watched this girls' match last night. It was a 6-man tag, and unbelievable match. And Bill, you know how hard it is to do a 6-man tag.
Yeah, very difficult.
These girls, they tore it up. I can't remember the names of the teams or anything, but what a match! And they were a real tag team. They were together for a long time, so it was really good.
Do you remember what promotion it was in?
It was in the WWF. It was NXT.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's a thing. Like watching. How important do you think it is? I mean, you guys obviously are friendly. You're still working together after all these years.
39 years we've done doing it.
Yeah.
We were talking the other day.
And how important do you think that is to being friendly with your tag partner like that?
Well, it's part of the chemistry. I mean, everybody, whatever sport it's in, baseball, football, basketball, they all talk about chemistry. And it is a key and very important component. Very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you like what Bill was saying earlier. If the office came up and said, Barry, it's time for you to get beat tonight. I mean, I can't get where, I'm looking at it like, well, gosh, I'm going to look weak now. I don't want to do this. And Bill was the same way. And that's so important. And when you're friends, you're like it's a team. It doesn't matter who got beat. It's how you got beat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask, you guys were, I mean, I think you guys have one of the longest tag team reigns. When you put all your reigns together, you have one of the longest tag team championship reigns in WWF, WWE history. Was there a point when you guys were on top that you guys kind of had a little more clout to talk to Vince about what you thought should happen with the division or anything like that?
No, to be honest with you, neither one of us were the guys who would want to go to the office and want to pick up the phone and make a call. We let our ability and our in-ring performance speak for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if they ask us for advice or they ask us for an opinion or to set up an angle or something, we had that expertise to do it. But we weren't, I mean, there was too many politics going on, and Barry had seen it when he went to WCW as well. Let your ability in the ring and your interview ability speak for you.
Yeah, it was like they'd come in with a finish and everything, and we didn't mind any finish that they gave us really because we just work harder if we were getting beat, or we'd make the match look so good it didn't even matter if he got beat or if you'd win. It just so we didn't have any complaints. There was no reason to go talk to Vince. You'd see him at TV and you do interviews and you talk to him and he'd kind of tell you what to say in the interviews, but it was never, Vince, I'm not going to do this. Let's do this. I mean, we didn't have to do it. And I think that's why we were champions for so long is they had no trouble with us.
Yeah.
And we had
I also think that they respected us. They respected the fact that we were drawing money. And it's funny in the business, they have a little more leeway when you're putting butts in the seats and bringing cash in.
Right. I remember hearing a basketball player. It was actually DeMar DeRozan. I'm a Kings fan, Sacramento Kings fan, and DeMar DeRozan is like the biggest acquisition we've ever had. And he said they asked him a question about things, and he just said, "Winning fixes everything. If you have a bad PR, win, and everything's fine." And kind of the same thing in wrestling. If you're drawing, I think people don't ask questions.
Exactly.
And you guys were definitely drawing. Was there a tag team that you enjoyed working with the most?
I wouldn't say the most, but we were. That's another question we get a lot. Funny, we were just talking about it Saturday and Sunday in Buffalo. The time that we were there were so many good tag teams. You had the Bulldogs, the Hart Foundation, the Killer Bees, the Brainbusters, Haku and Andre. I know I'm leaving out the young stuff. I'm leaving out probably 10.
Yeah. Killer Bees. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, there were so many good tag teams that we really enjoyed going out every night and wrestling. It was fun.
Yeah, what was so great about it is we wanted to have the best match every night on the card. That was kind of our goal. And when you're out there and you're tearing it up, and it seemed like almost every night we'd come back to the dressing room and we'd thank our opponents. And we were all so excited because we tore the house down. And it didn't matter what tag team it was. That was kind of what we did every night. And I don't know if the other teams did that every night with everybody, but it just seemed like it was like that for us, wasn't it, Bill?
Yeah. And that was our objective. And most times I think, and not blowing smoke up our butt, but I think most times we did have the best. And it's hard for two singles. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
We were both in single matches years ago. It's hard for two singles to outdo a good tag team match with a good referee and a couple managers. You can't match it.
Yeah, and I think every team we went against, I think they wanted to work with us more than we wanted to work with them. Because I think, being up there, I'm sure they're going, God, I can't wait to work with the Demolition, and they just kept getting us teams and getting us teams. And it was really a good feeling,
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. I wanted to ask too, so when the Powers of Pain came in to the WWE, in the WWF rather, it was actually really funny because I remember when you guys were on a house show here in Sacramento, and it was the first time I'd seen the Powers of Pain. I knew them from the NWA WCW. They were heels, and then they came here and they were faces. And I actually remember, you probably don't remember this at all, but I remember there was a house. It was a house show, and it looked like almost they beat you. You were the champions, but it was like an accident. And then after the match, they said, "Oh, the belts weren't on the line," kind of thing. But anyway, my question is they came in as faces. You guys were still heels, and then you guys did a double switch. Was it always supposed to be a double switch, or was that a situation where they were trying to switch Fuji to being like a face manager and it didn't work out?
Well, we've gone over that many, many times. And to be honest with you, I think the people that are in charge, and that was Vince, he heard the response of the fans, and they were cheering us. I mean, even when we were heels, it wasn't long after we got established. People would cheer us, and they'd cheer us all the time, no matter who we were against, even against, like the Hearts sometimes or the Bulldogs. They'd cheer us. And I think that they panicked and they said, my goodness, we got to have these guys, good guys. And then they did the switch, and I think it was in Cleveland, wasn't it, Barry?
Yeah, I can't remember.
It was one of the pay-per-views. I think it was Cleveland, where Fuji turned on us, but they didn't need to. I mean, the object is to control the fans, and we were controlling the fans. And just because they're cheering for you, you don't give them. Once the ketchup's out of the bottle, you can't put it back in. So I think they jumped the gun, and they not only with us, they've done that a number of times.
Well, and then it was almost like, and they never told us they were going to do this or anything until right before. It wasn't like they talked to us and said, "Hey, we're going to make you baby faces." But then I think they were a little upset that they changed us baby faces, because then when the Road Warriors came in, they wanted them to be baby faces.
Yeah.
But then when we wrestled those guys, they kind of booed them coming in because they were the guys from the Southern Territory, and we were already established in the WWF. So then they wanted to turn us heels, and then all this different crap happened, and it was never really good matches because of that. The thought process, there was none.
Yeah. They were moving and making decisions without thinking it through.
Well, and that was what's interesting. I remember when the Road Warriors came in, I remember thinking, oh, we're finally going to get a Demolition versus Road Warriors kind of feud. And it really never materialized into anything too big.
Too quick. They did it too quick. It's just like when they did Flair and Hogan. They could have had those guys going different. You had 3 towns going a night, and you tease it and you tease it. And they were there, Road Warriors and us. We could have stretched it out for a year and then gone to a WrestleMania or a big event and then started it. But
yeah, and it's too bad. You sit there and you wonder, because I remember, like I said, I was a young kid when that was going on, and I just didn't understand why they never really pulled the trigger on that. It just felt like that would be big money, and people were. I mean, I think everybody when the Road Warriors came in were like, "Oh, we're going to get them in Demolition eventually," and that would have been a big win. I mean, even when the Powers of Pain came in, and you worked with them, that was exciting too.
Yeah,
very similar. So,
and we, to be honest, we had, and both the Road Warriors were good friends, more close to Barry than I. But I had met them years ago when they first started, and we liked them and they liked us. But we had better matches with the Powers of Pain.
Yeah,
they weren't worried about how they looked during the match itself. They just wanted to have a good match. And if you're worried, does this make me look good or does this make me look weak? I want to be strong, and that was their mentality. It wasn't their personality, but they're trying to protect the Road Warriors and the facade of that. And we're just trying to have a match. And we had much better matches with Powers of Pain than we did with Road Warriors.
And that was probably the one time we probably, looking back, we should have went in and sat down with Vince, had a meeting with him and said, "Hey, wait a minute. Why don't you keep us apart for a year? We'll work our angle, they work their angle, and let's do something where, but we never did, because we didn't go to the office all the time.
Yep.
Do you look back on that time? Because you're right. Looking back at that time, if you listen to anybody talking about that time, there were a lot of politics going on, a lot of people going and getting in Vince's ear. And I know it sounds like you guys tried to be just professionals doing your jobs the way that you could. Do you sometimes look back and go, man, maybe I should have been a little more political. Maybe I could have protected us a little bit more and maybe made this go a little farther?
Not really, because
No.
both of us had options. I mean, when we had a situation develop, I remember one time, and we went and gave our notice. And we said, what are you going to do? I said, well, we knew what we were going to do. We were going to go to Japan. And then we also had an option to come to WCW. So we had options. So there again, we didn't have to go in and beg. And believe me, we both saw guys beg for their position. And that wasn't us. Wasn't me growing up, wasn't Barry growing up, wasn't us in the business. If they don't respect us enough for what we're doing in the ring, then we need to be moving on anyway.
And the craziest thing is we were the two guys in the tag team that you should have never ever wanted to get rid of, because we were that easy and worked that hard, never missed a night. We worked hard. We had the best matches we could have, and I mean, we weren't a headache. And it's just crazy that all of a sudden they want to bring you down. It's that's the business.
Yeah, it's interesting being, just even on it's funny even on an indie level, like a lower indie level, how people are so protective and there's so many egos in wrestling when you're like, you know what I mean? You're sitting there and you're like, we're wrestling in front of 100 people. No one's going to see this. You know what I mean? Like kind of situation where they're like, oh, I got to look strong. And I'm like, for who? Your mom? It's just kind
of. They live in Sacramento, but they don't want the fans in Philadelphia to know that they lost. They're never going to see it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so now I wanted to ask you, when they brought Brian Adams in as Crush, is that something that you felt needed to happen? Was that something that they wanted? What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, we didn't feel it was needed, but I had a history of going back and forth to Japan. I had a standing contract as a mass superstar for 12 to 14 weeks a year. And I did that for over 14 years. Well, it was explained to me by the doctor. I had an allergic reaction to shrimp. And it wasn't the shrimp, it was the iodine in the shrimp. I had back and forth so much, I had consumed all the shellfish, which has iodine in it. And he explained it to me. It was like an overdose. That one extra piece of shrimp threw me off the limit, and I had a anaphylactic reaction to it. Ended up in the hospital, and there again, they panicked. The doctor said, "This can be corrected," and but you need, I think it was probably less than a month. They could have given Barry a month off, but no. We got to not only do they not give him a month off, they got to put I think Neidhart was with you one night, right, or 2 nights. All these guys, they could have said there was a medical situation, Axe can't perform, and Barry's off. But they brought Crush in, and we got along well with Crush, but he had never been in that position. That's a lofty position. That's like taking somebody from an independent group where he was a smaller group and thrusting him in the main events in front of thousands of people and doing interviews. And we did our interviews one take. Tell us where we're going to be, who our opponents are. Boom. One take. Didn't matter. Well, he'd make a mistake periodically, and the guys would razz him. The Demolition doesn't make a mistake. It's one take. Well, then that's in the back of his mind. Now he's making more mistakes. Yeah. So they thrust him in that situation, and it wasn't fair to him. They could have given Barry some time off, me come out of the hospital. I was there for, I think, 3 or 4 days, all kind of testing, and then come out, give me the 3 weeks till I get the checkup, start again.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And Clark did a really, really good job. But you could have had the best wrestler in the world in that position. But how do you replace Axe when it's Axe and Smash? You know,
Right.
it was different at the very beginning with Randy Colley. You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't really formed yet. But now after all these years, it's not like you just take one guy out and put another guy in. And I mean, Crush was a great guy. He was fun to be around, everything. And we had great matches, but it just the people just was like, well, where's Axe? You know, we want
Mm.
Axe in there. So
Mm.
it was really tough on him too. But
Mm.
you know, we made do what we had to. But yeah, like Bill said, I would have loved to have had 3 weeks off and heal my body too. You know.
Yeah.
Sure. Now, watching wrestling, I feel like over the probably the last 5 or 6 years, there have been, or maybe even 10 years. Well, maybe most, actually, that's maybe not be true. I mean, after you guys, the Dudleys and the Hardys and all these teams came through, and then now you have the New Day and the Usos and all these guys who kind of did tag team wrestling really well. It's not as big as it was, but they have some pop up. As you've gone throughout, because your in-ring wrestling careers kind of had gone to its, gone towards the end, was there some of these teams that you looked at and said, man, I wish they were back in our day?
Well, we had an opportunity to work against all the teams at that particular time. Yeah, when you mentioned the Dudleys and the Hardys, and yeah, I think it would have been fun
Mm-hmm.
to have some matches with those guys, but it's not going to happen, and neither
Sure.
one of us have ambitions of getting in the ring.
We see all those guys on the road right now, and all of us are limping and beat up, and
Yeah,
the matches the Dudleys had, holy cow, they're going through tables and off the tops of the ring, and the Hardys, they're walking around, they can't even walk, their knees are so bad and everything, and it's just like it takes a toll on you, and we didn't work like those guys do, so I think they would have had to kind of change our way, right, Bill?
yeah, they'd have to adjust to our style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing that's really interesting about wrestling. And this is what I thought. I actually was watching with my son not too long ago. We watched some old matches from back in the 80s and 90s because, we actually went to WrestleMania 40. I took my two boys and had a great time. And they were like, the crowd pop for some of those things was so huge. And I was like, you guys don't understand. Back in the 80s and 90s, that was like an every night thing. You'd go to a house show and get pops like that. And we
Yeah,
popped some of those old shows back. And I showed them, I always like showing new people Hogan, Andre, because they worked a slam and got a huge reaction on a body slam. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
oh yeah,
that's the way all of those matches back then was it was like, you don't have to do all that to get over. And the way you guys worked, even in that time, you had guys like Snuka and different guys like that who were flying off the top and doing things, but you guys were just brute force. You believed when you guys did your demolition smashes, when you were tagging people, you believed you were beating the absolute tar. I remember at WrestleMania 5, you guys wrestling Powers of Pain, and you guys did that to him. I think you did it. I think it was to the Warlord, and it looked like you absolutely torched him.
yeah.
And he's a bigger guy, and it's so much more believable. Perhaps you can talk about that because I have a lot of indie wrestlers who listen to my podcast. Perhaps you could impart some wisdom that you guys see from wrestling when you were then to now.
Well, you summed it up very, very good because we were talking. That's funny because we were just talking about this. We had a Q&A yesterday, I believe, was in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Hours of Pain were there, and Ken Patera was there, and a bunch of the fans were asking about the difference. And Warlord brought up the same thing that you're talking about. That everybody nowadays is flying around. So if the first match is doing 7 flips and 3 times off the top rope, then the second one's got to add 1, and the third one's got to add a move over the top and land on the table. By the 7th match, people are saying, "Wait a minute,
Yeah.
it's not really real here."
Yeah.
So you got to tell a story, and I think that's the mentality now. And it's not the guys because they all have talent to do that, but I think they're caught up in it. Well, gee, I have to do this to stand out. To stand out, maybe you should grab a hold and tell a story and try to get the guy to fight getting out of the hold. And he gets out of the hold, and boom, you put him back in the hold. And now you're telling a story. Holy mackerel, he's really stretching that guy's arm. He might rip it off.
Yeah, now a guy hurts his leg, and it's only hurt for about 5 seconds, and then he's running the ropes again.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's
Going back, rip off the top rope.
yeah, but times have changed, and they must be doing something right though, because WrestleMania was what, the best WrestleMania they ever had last year in Philly.
Yeah, they're selling out all over the place.
So,
But I bring it up to my kids because like I said, I mean I trained with a guy, Johnny Jeter. He was part of the Spirit Squad in the early 2000s, and he was trained by back in the old OVW when they were doing, where Brock Lesnar, all those guys came through, and his, I mean, so a lot of his training came old school training, and he, what I brought up to him was, I was like, why don't you watch Roman Reigns? Because Roman Reigns does not do a lot as far as what he's doing, or Brock Lesnar. I mean, he's not flying off at he's doing a bunch of suplexes, but or Randy Orton, where these guys who are not doing all of that, but are getting the biggest reactions. And
they're still over because people believe that what they do is legit.
Yeah, I remember hearing the Undertaker one time say, "It's not about the moves are just part of telling the story." And I try when I still every once in a while go out there and wrestle, even though I'm in my 40s and I feel broken too, but I still go out there every once in a while and try to do it. And that's the way I am. I'm 6 foot. You can't see. I'm 6'7", so I'm a little bit of a bigger guy. And when I get a little indie guy who's 5'8", wants to do all these flips, I'm always like, we don't have to do all that, right? But
what's nice is you can tell them, yeah, you go ahead and do all those flips. I ain't doing it.
Yeah, right.
Flip around me.
Yeah, that's what. It's funny, because I got back into it and I always got a little annoyed because, I'm so much bigger than the guys on the indie scene that they really can't do a lot to me. So it's always me kind of doing the Andre, like I'm going to, they're going to try to knock me down. And I'm like, I can actually work, guys. I would like to do some working, but then I'm like, well, I don't have to bump tonight. So I guess that's nice. It's save them.
Yeah.
At 43 years old, I need to save them, So, speaking of Andre, you were working with Andre and Haku at the end of his career. And I remember when I would watch those matches, Andre would literally not do anything except the final elbow, So he was on his last legs. But what was it like working with them when you were working with them?
Well, I had known Andre for years and years and years when he was, believe it or not, he was coming off the top rope with a big splash. And if you don't think that's a sight, you're in the center of the ring, because when he takes off, he's extended all the way across. Yeah. So I remember working with him when he was doing a lot, but it's just his body caught up with him, and Barry and I talk about it once in a while. Well, we didn't realize that how much pain he was in because he'd never tell you. He didn't want you to know, and he felt comfortable working with us because of our past years of working. And also, he knew that we weren't going to hurt him, and he didn't need additional pain at that time. And we have aches and pains now, and we get flying home yesterday, and Barry was sick, and I'm tired, and Andre literally popped into my head. I'm thinking, my God, every day must have been a sacrifice for him, because what we think is normal or a little uncomfortable was always uncomfortable for him. Yeah. Cabs, buses, even plane seats, a seat in a restaurant. So anytime that we had with him, we really enjoyed it. He loved playing cards with Barry. I couldn't play cards. My mind was going all over the place, but Barry was playing cribbage with him all the time.
And I think, with Haku, we were such good friends with Haku too, and he was such a good worker. And all of us worked the goal was to make Andre look like a giant, and that's what he was. And that's where X and Smash was very good about making whoever they worked with who their character was. And so we do a lot of the spots with Haku, and he was so strong, you made him look strong, and then you made Andre look strong. But the biggest thing is they both trusted us that, we were going to put them over, and then they were going to put us over. And it was a fun time in the ring with them because we joke in the ring with them, and it was a fun night. And I think for Andre, it was great for him to not have to worry about us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now look at it's interesting. I ask all the wrestlers this question, and I get a lot of different answers. Looking back at your career, I know wrestling is hard on families. It's hard on the wrestlers being on the road all the time. If you could go back and do it again, would you do it again?
Most definitely.
Yeah, I would. I mean, we both have strong wives. In this business, for anybody to have one wife, which we both have, they made decisions. They bought houses. They bought items for we'd call home and they weren't saying, "Gee, we need this." We knew that they could make the decision. We come home, oh my God, you bought this and got that, great deal.
I was in Japan one time for about 3 weeks, and back then you couldn't really call home because it cost you $1 million to call. You didn't have cell phones or anything. So I did my one phone call about a week and a half in, and my wife says, "Yeah, I bought a new house." And I said, "What happened to our old house?" Because I didn't like it. I wanted to get a different house in another neighborhood. And I said, "Where's it at?" And she says, "Well, when I pick you up, we'll go to it." And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know where I live anymore. And of course, she bought the house for me because I had 3 acres with duck hunting and goose hunting in the backyard. But I mean, she did that 3 different times when I was on the road. We got different homes. And but I wasn't going to mess up her home. It was her home, and I'm there for 3 or 4 days and get out of there. I didn't want to mess that up. And she was the greatest wife in the world. In fact, 39 years tomorrow.
Wow, congratulations. That's a feat for anybody, let alone a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
Well, tell me, what do you think it was about you guys and your relationship with your wives that made you so successful when so many other pro wrestlers or just people in general aren't?
Well, that'd be hard to say. We always looked at it as it was a job. We went on the road and sacrificed, but our wives and family sacrificed just as much. And we wanted to come home and look around at the house and say, "Hey, this is why we're sacrificing." They're strong-willed ladies, and they can make decisions on their own. And we'd hear some of the guys are on the phone calling, and it was sad because they couldn't even make one decision. And you're on the road, you got to worry about everything else. So we're both fortunate.
Yeah, one of the greatest things for me was I was a partier. I went with all the guys all the time and everything. And then when I got to the WWF, I was with Bill and Fuji and Ron Bass and Tito Santana, and it was all business. It wasn't out partying. You made your money. You didn't go spend it before you got home. And that really helped me out over the years of really learning the business and keeping keeping clean. And one of the things my wife always said is I never gave you bad news when you were on the road, because then that's all you would do was worry. When I got home, then we'd talk about what happened that was wrong or whatever. But, that's where, she was always thinking ahead, don't ruin my trip at home, because then you might get hurt. You might, something might happen. So, it just worked. Great wives.
Yeah, that's awesome. You don't hear about that a lot. So that's really great. Do people when they meet you, just like not at a wrestle con, but just they come to your home, or maybe you're out grocery shopping or something and they meet you and then they find out you were pro wrestlers, are they shocked? or you seem, the reason I say is because like I vision you guys with your face paint and just beating the tar out of people, and now I'm looking at both of you and you just look like normal guys you could hang out with. You know what I mean? Like, dude, are they surprised?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's amazing. Sometimes people recognize us because of our voice or something,
Right.
and or they'll look at you and they're trying to, where did I see this guy before? And then by the time you're gone, so
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when we were wrestling, we had our faces painted all the time, and we usually stayed away from everybody, so nobody, the crowd and the news people and everything would be all over Savage and Hogan and all these guys, and we just kind of sneak around the corner and get away from everybody. Nobody knew who we were. They just thought we were just big guys,
Yeah.
and it was kind of nice to not get recognized like that. But then
yeah.
all of a sudden they'd go, oh, that's OG, then all of a sudden they'd know who you are and everything, and then all hell would break loose.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, so was there ever a chance that you guys were going to pair up and go elsewhere other than the WWE for an extended run?
Well, we had an offer. We were approached by when Ole Anderson was doing the booking, and I had approached Barry, and I said we got an offer to go to Atlanta for WCW. It was going to be great for me because I live in Atlanta. So we both thought about it, but there were so many politics. I mean, if you remember the history of WCW at that time, there was like how many factions, Barry? 5 or 6 different factions. And
yep,
this guy
exactly.
was going to be the booker, and that guy was going to be the booker. No, this guy's going to be the booker, and they're all jockeying for position. And I didn't want to get involved in that and all that politics. Uh, so I had an opportunity to go back and forth in Japan, and but we had offers. Yeah, we did have offers.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
when one time. That's the one time we gave our notice, and boy, things changed. The direction changed very positively for
yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
And they lock you up pretty good in those, what you look like and all this stuff and everything. So we would have had to change,
Mhm.
but yeah, we talked about it,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I only got a few minutes. I want to respect your time because you gave me 45 minutes and all that. But I wanted to ask you guys, I usually ask a few different questions of you guys, of people at the end. But one question I want to ask you guys is someday you guys are going to pass away. And when you do, there'll be a funeral and a eulogy. What's one thing that you hope that somebody says about you in your eulogy?
Well, I hope that don't happen soon.
I hope it doesn't either. I hope it's a long time from now.
Yeah, I just want to be remembered as an honest guy,
Yeah.
somebody who, neither one of us cause trouble for anybody else. We don't rat on people. Uh, I think both of us feel that our ability is good, so we made it on our ability. We didn't go behind somebody's back and stab them. And if they think that, hey, he was a pretty good guy, he was honest, and not not too many people can say anything negative about him. We did our job.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's almost exactly like what I would say. And plus, I would want to be known as somebody that would want to help people. If somebody asked for help, we did help, and we didn't do anything to make somebody look bad. Just because if we weren't jealous of anybody, we just were confident enough of who we were, and we didn't care if somebody else was getting a push because we knew we were strong enough and good enough to keep it going.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, we got about a minute left. So where can people find you if they want to follow you?
We're in Search and Destroy You on Instagram. Search and Destroy You, and we do a lot of. We're out about twice a month. We're in South Bend this coming weekend,
Oh, love South.
and then we're in. What'd you say it was, Barry?
We're in Connecticut the next weekend,
Yeah,
and
we
then we're
usually
in,
go out twice a month. We could go out every week, but for this stretch, for about Barry mentioned about 6 weeks, we're out every week. But Santa Claus is coming down the road, so
Yeah,
We got a
exactly.
Santa Claus.
Yeah, that's
Got 4 grandchildren, and Barry's got 3. So Santa makes a big drop at the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. At South Bend, I love it up there. I served a mission for my church, and I spent the last 7 months on Notre Dame campus. So it's a beautiful
Nice.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Well, guys, you know, I just want to say, as someone who's an old school wrestling fan, thank you for the memories. You guys were always great. Every time I did a lot. Every house show you came to the Arco Arena, I was there, and you've always put on a great match. And just it's been great to follow you guys and great to finally meet you guys. It's just been awesome. For those of you who are listening, follow them. I'm going to try to make it out to LA when you guys are out there.
Oh, great.
Beautiful.
So,
Yeah, it's LA Fan Fest. It's I think it should be doing real well.
yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
Do they still have? Is the Argo Arena still?
no,
basketball?
no. They built the Golden One Arena, which is out here it's in downtown Sacramento now. But man, the Arco Arena was such a special experience.
Incredible.
Yeah, fans were even now. The Kings are finally good again. It's been a long time, but even now, when their crowd's excited, it's not the same as those old rafters where people would get their feet moving and it would be the rumbling and all that. It was just such a different experience. So yeah. So anyhow, well, thank you very much, and you know, we'll do this again for sure.
All right, thank you, man.
Thanks for having us.
Good meeting you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take care. Yeah, Bill.